Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going to talk about Rainbow Six Siege weapon damage. How much damage do your bullets do? Are they affected by hitting different parts of your opponent's body? Are they affected when they go through walls? How much does your body armor reduce damage? How much does Rook's extra body armor plates reduce damage? How many walls can your bullets travel through? Is there damage drop off over distance? We're going to answer all of those questions in today's video. Now the first and most important thing that I want to address right off the bat is that you should not be paying attention to the weapon damage in the in-game menu. I was doing this for quite a while playing the game initially. I was like, oh, this gun does 50 damage. That means it can two-shot body shot, right? Wrong. Those weapon damages in the menu are inaccurate. Some of them are correct for some of the handguns, but for the most part, I haven't found any primary weapons, whether it's a PDW or assault rifle, that actually matches up the damage output in-game with the menu. Now, the first time this became apparent was when testing the P90 in-game. It's one of the lowest damaging guns in the game. The menu says it does 30 damage per shot. When I shoot somebody in the chest or abdomen, it does 20 damage. So that is 33% less damage than the menu says, 10 damage less than the actual number 30. Now, if I shoot them in the legs or arms, it is only 15 damage. So the legs and arms, as far as I can tell, are pretty much a 75% damage multiplier, a 0.75% multiplier, if you will, and then the chest or torso would be a 100% damage multiplier. Now, when I put a suppressor on the P90, it reduced the chest damage to 15, even though the menu said it does 25 damage, and then the leg damage was reduced all the way down to 11. And all this initial testing was done with just one bubble of body armor. If you look at your operator selections, they'll each have different levels of body armor. There's either one bubble, two bubble, or three bubbles. Now, when I started doing my testing on level 2 body armor, it seemed to be overall around a 10 to 15% damage reduction. This did seem to fluctuate slightly depending on the weapon I was using. It was not an exact percentage across the board, which makes things very hard to calculate and predict and anticipate and decide which body armor or which weapons are best to go with. In addition to that, at level 2 body armor, my damage reduction for legs and arms seems to be about 70% instead of 75%. So you're dealing less damage at level 2 to the legs and arms. And if you choose a level 3 body armor operator like, say, Fuse or Rook, then you're only going to be doing 60% damage to the limbs, legs, or armor. And that's without adding on the Rook extra body armor plates that you can pick up at the beginning of the round if you're playing on defense. Now, when it comes to chest shots, if we're talking about level 1 body armor being 100% damage, then level 2 body armor is going to give you a 10 to 15% damage reduction, and level 3 body armor is going to give you about a 20% damage reduction. But what if you're using level 3 body armor plus Rook's armored plates? You can get a 40% damage reduction on your torso shots, which is incredible. And your legs or arms will only be taking about 33% of the maximum damage that they can take. So to give you an example, using the lowest damaging weapon in the game, the P90 with the suppressor, only 15 damage to a lightly armored target in the chest. If I shot somebody in the leg who was using Rook's armored plates and full body armor, it would only do 5 damage. Now, granted, this is an uncommon situation because the SMGs and PDWs, the lower damaging weapons in the game, are only on the defensive side and only the defensive side gets Rook, but just to give you an example, that is the least amount of damage you could be doing in the game, is to shoot somebody with Rook's body armor and level 3 armor plating in the leg with a suppressed P90. It'll only do 5 damage, so you could shoot somebody up to 20 times before they die, which is kind of crazy to think about. So in other words, body armor does an incredibly good job at reducing incoming damage, especially to the legs and torso. I mean, you got Rook's body armor on there. It's pretty much like everybody having level 3 body armor to begin with, and if you have level 3 plus Rook's body armor, you can get just an insane amount of damage reduction. Now let's talk a little bit about the other guns and what kind of damage they're doing in game versus the menu, because this is really important when you decide what weapon you want to use. The damage output is very important to deciding on your gun. The 5.52 Commando says it does 50 damage in the game menu. However, if you shoot a lightly armored target in the chest, it only does 47 damage. So you're going to need to at least 3-shot somebody in the body to down them with the 5.52 Commando. So there is a significant trade-off there, and I feel like the menu is pretty misleading with this weapon because 2 shots versus 3 shots is a big difference. But is the 3 damage reduction from menu to in-game really that big a deal? Is that the biggest offender we have here? Well, let's look at the MP5K. In-game menu, it says it does 40 damage, which is pretty darn good for a high rate of fire tiny little PDW. In actual game damage, it only does 25 damage to a lightly armored target in the chest. That is 15 damage less per shot than the menu actually says it does. Now, as much as I wanted to go through every single gun and figure out what their actual damage models were and damage values were, this game is set up horribly for doing in-game testing because of starting rounds and all that crap. It takes so long to restart rounds and reset stuff. It's just a nightmare testing all this stuff. So I'm hoping that Ubisoft in the next patch updates their menu to actually reflect the realistic game damage, because right now it's just incredibly misleading. All right, let's mix in some wall multipliers here. I only tested it out on house. I'm hoping that the wall damage reduction is consistent on other maps though. Basically, if you shoot a bullet through a sheetrock wall, you're going to get a 50% damage reduction. All of your bullets are going to do half as much damage as they would if you just straight up shot somebody without anything between you. And then once you actually punch a hole through the wall, like a big enough hole to see through, your bullets are going to do 100% damage. However, if there is a stud or a 2x4, one of those dividers left in the wall, those little pieces of wood that you'll see, and you shoot that, your damage will still be reduced by 33%. So just watch out for the studs in the wall and understand why your damage might not be full on if you hit that. Regardless of that, if you hit somebody in the head, it's still going to be an instant death. Anytime you shoot somebody in the head, no matter what gun it is, how many barriers you have in the way, as long as that bullet hits its target, they're going to die. Now, how about 2 walls? People seem to think that you can shoot through unlimited number of walls and just wreck people. Well, that's not actually the case. In fact, every normal gun, that's assault rifle and PDW, at least the ones that I tested, could only shoot through 1 wall and still deal damage. 2 walls was too much. However, what happens most of the time in a firefight is you start shooting through 1 wall and it quickly punches a hole through that wall. Then your bullets go through that wall and start punching through the wall behind it. However, from the beginning of that firefight, you're never going to go through 2 walls unless you have a high-powered weapon. If you're using Glaz's DMR, not only can you shoot through castles, barricades to kill somebody on the other side, you can also shoot through the airplane windows on the airplane map, and you can shoot through 2 walls. However, you can't shoot through 3 different sheetrock walls. Granted, this would be a pretty uncommon situation, but if it was something you're trying to do, your bullets would actually stop after the first 2 walls. But if you kept shooting, you would make a hole very quickly, and then you'd be able to shoot through all 3. The same applies for Tachenka's mounted machine gun. That can go through 2 walls straight up as well. So it might give you a few more options that you hadn't thought about before, but ultimately it's still a pretty difficult weapon to use effectively. Now, weapons also have bullet damage drop off. It's hard to tell you how much because we don't have any sort of damage charts to give us accurate plots on this, but testing out the 416C on the airplane map at point blank range, it did 30 damage for a leg shot, which isn't bad. Then I had my opponent run as far away as possible. I scoped in, shot him in the leg, and it only did 17 damage. So you can get potentially like a half damage drop off at extreme ranges. Granted, these extreme ranges are fairly uncommon, but it is something also to consider when picking a weapon. Granted, we still don't know all the damage outputs of the weapons, but it's just something to keep in mind. You'll be doing less damage at range, plus the armor reduction. Again, this game favors headshots like you wouldn't believe. It doesn't matter what range you shoot somebody at, they still die from 1 shot to the head. Also, if you choose an operator that has some of those big ear cups on the side of his head, that counts as your headshot hitbox. So you're increasing the size at which somebody can just give you 1 little tap to the head and you'll die. This can be pretty tricky if you're playing a class like Blitz, because his headgear does tend to sort of eclipse his shield from time to time, and that'll make you an easy target. Now, I was hoping to give you guys a much more complete weapon damage breakdown of this game. The best I can do is give you what I've researched and found on my own. The amount of work it would take to actually go through and test every gun damage in-game would just take so much time. I'm hoping that Ubisoft includes that information in the menu, or maybe a website like simthic.com will dig in there and start digging out the gun stats so that we can make more intelligent decisions and choices based on if we want to equip a suppressor or which weapon to run. That kind of stuff will really help us out. At the moment, it doesn't matter too much overall, because as long as you're a good shot and you aim for the head, you will get that one-shot kill. But it would be nicer to be able to understand our weapon dynamics a little bit better. Hopefully this video starts you in the right direction with some of this stuff, and maybe clears up some of the mysteries you had about how many shots does it take to shoot somebody in the body. Yeah, it can take 10 or more shots, especially if you're shooting people through wall cover and they have triple body armor plus Rook's body armor as well. You could end up putting a lot of bullets into somebody's body before they actually die. So it's kind of a weird game, like 10 shots to the body versus 1 shot to the head. I don't know how that's balanced, but whatever. It's the way that Ubisoft wants to make Rainbow Six Siege. Hopefully we'll get those stats next patch. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing out.